we finish.
That's done. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Vale Horse District Council's Cabinet meeting today on the 30th of January 2026, and it's the first Cabinet meeting of the year. It seems a long time since we last met in this room. So welcome everybody, both in the room and online. I will go straight to apologies for absence and can we do a roll call?
If you wish. So apologies we've had from Councillor Emily Smith, and also to make you aware, Councillor Robert Clegg is joining us online today.
He's online.
In the room we've got Councillor Andy Crawford, Councillor Andy Forsham, Councillor Bethia Thomas, Councillor Mark Coleman, Councillor Helen Pickhills and Councillor Neil Fawcett. And we've got Adriana Partridge, my Chief Executive as well. And that's everyone in the room.
And yourself.
And me.
So thank you very much. We will go straight onto the minutes. Has everybody have a chance to look through the minutes?
Yeah.
And is everybody happy that they are a true and accurate record of our last meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I will sign those after the meeting is finished. So do we have any declarations of interest for the items that Robert's put his hand up?
Thank you. I'm not sure it's a declaration of interest, but in the interest of transparency, on the item 8, the Joint Climate and Nature Advisory Committee, I was involved in the discussions around that back when I was chair of SEAC before I joined Cabinet. So I don't think it really matters because I can't vote anyway, but if I was in the room, then I would abstain because I wouldn't want to mark my own homework.
Thank you, Councillor Clegg. And it's good to see you online. Thank you. So no other declarations of interest? Thank you. So we'll go to urgent business. There's nothing. We haven't done the emergency exit, but I'm hoping that everybody does know how to leave the building in case of an emergency. There aren't any scheduled fire alarms or anything like that. So, public participation. We don't have anybody. I believe there was somebody who was potentially going to come.
That's right. They confirmed they couldn't make it. I don't know when you get to the item. Maybe the officers provide an update on those discussions.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much. And there are no, I believe, recommendations from other committees this time.
That's right, not this time.
So nothing so we go straight on to item number 8. And hopefully Councillor Clegg can introduce it's the establishment of a joint climate and nature advisory committee, which is slightly different to how we've managed things in the past. So if you could introduce that item, Councillor Clegg.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I'm sure Cabinet's aware, we currently have a Climate Emergency Advisory Committee on Vale and a Climate and Ecological Emergency Advisory Committee on South Oxfordshire District Council. They're both referred to as SEAC, but obviously there's an extra E in the South version. This paper report invites Cabinet to consider the establishment of a joint Climate and Nature Advisory Committee together with South Oxfordshire District Council, and this would replace the current 2 SEACs. The rationale for this initiative basically comes from a number of sources. We now have a joint nature and climate action plan adopted last year, and so we're both pretty much moving in tandem on our nature and climate action, carbon reduction targets and so on. And the actions in that NCAP are identical for both councils, and reporting on the NCAP will be a joint exercise. Also, since 2022, both SEACs have run with identical agendas, and the discussion in both committees has been pretty similar. It's therefore a suggestion that by combining the two and having a joint committee, that will free up officer time, and also we may well have broader, more interesting discussions by bringing the two groups together. And also point out that we have already been running task and finish groups that have been combined. It's only the formal meetings that have been separated so far. Things to note on the paper, it mentions 2 meetings per year, but that's a minimum. Personally, I'm in favour of more but shorter meetings, and that's entirely doable, although I point out that I have relinquished my authority to request that now that I'm no longer SEAC chair. Yeah, task and finish groups will continue, and Cabinet can request the joint committee to look at particular topics. Apart from that, the draft terms of reference are pretty much the same. The old SEACs and the new JCNAC. Not a huge amount of changing. The numbers of members involved will be the same for Vale. It will be changing for South, but I've spoken to my colleagues over there, and they're absolutely fine with that. So it really is a sensible merger of the 2 committees that will free up officer time and should lead to more interesting discussions.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. Having held the portfolio previously, I agree that I think this is a very sensible streamlining of the system, and it frees up officer resources. I think it's the whole SEAC idea was it was instigated, I think, in 2019 when we came in, and it was a bit of a work in progress, and it had to sort of be worked around and changed. So it's a bit of a moving piece, but I think now we've got a really clear pattern for it. And with the joint climate and action plan, I think it makes a huge amounts of sense. But one thing I wanted to say is just to say thank you to South, because I think South Oxfordshire District Council's SEAC was bigger, I think, than ours, and they've had to make a few more changes to allow this to happen. So I'm grateful to them that the consideration's been made, and we can do this. So I was going to open it out to anybody with questions or comments.
So I have one, and it concerns the fact that the current SEAC, both SEACs, receive the chair. I think it's only the chair, not the vice chair, receive a special responsibility allowance. But there's no reference in this report for this new committee to have. But because it is a new committee, my understanding is that allowance cannot automatically be transferred from the old committee to the new. I think it's appropriate that it's at least looked into to see whether there should be a remuneration package. Again, my understanding is this is for council, not for cabinet. So I think I would like to propose an additional recommendation that the council is asked to consider asking for an independent remuneration panel to review whether an SRA should be assigned to the chair of this new committee.
Robin,
if for no other reason than because it's going to cost me money, and I'd like to know where it works in the budget.
Councillor Clay?
Councillor Common, are you sure you're looking at the most up-to-date version of the paper? Because the one on the Vale's website includes that specific recommendation as recommendation number 4. So I think it's already covered, and I agree with you, but I don't think a change is needed because it's already included.
Okay, no, in that case, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at the one that was emailed out to us.
Right.
So move on to other points. I'm going to have a look. It could well be that the paper's already been updated. That's fine. I can find it. Don't worry. Yeah. Okay, it does.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Fulton?
Thank you. I've had some experience of working in a joint committee with our South colleagues and friends, and found it very productive. I was on the Joint Audit and Governance Committee for quite some time, and eventually co-chaired it. It did give officers the opportunity to do deeper dives in preparation for stuff. I think it's a good way of being more efficient in our working, but also giving greater scrutiny to what we're doing. So I think it's a very, very positive step.
Excellent. Sorry, Councillor Fawcett.
Yeah, just so the up-to-date recommendation for it authorises the head of legal and democratic to call an independent remuneration panel for an allowance to be established for the co-chair role, which is good. I think in cash terms, obviously it would then be open to them to increase the allowance, but we are currently budgeting presumably for a chair for the allowance for the chair of the current committee. And if they simply carry that forward, then it's already covered in terms of budget.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't need to worry too much about it.
And I imagine if the recommendation was that it was increased, it's not going to be such a significant increase. This is quite a low figure, compared to the rest of the budget. So I can't see it will be a problem, but we do need to have that included.
Yeah. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I really should know the answer to this question, but who will have the ultimate authority to put or choose not to put items on the agenda?
I would say to me go to Dominic. I'm assuming it's the chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a combination of the chair working with the officers. So we have a number of agenda setting meetings where we agree the agenda with one of the senior officers present. So it's a joint effort between the officers and the chair of the committee.
So my follow-up then, because I thought that might be the answer, is that given we have rotating chairs, what happens if there's a dispute between the two people who are joint chairs? And at what point does the handing over of the chair happen? Is it immediately after a meeting or immediately before a meeting?
And Councillor Crawford.
Well, at joint scrutiny, usually chairs rotate on a meeting by meeting basis, and we haven't seen any co-chairs disagree. But I guess if anything happened like that would be dealt with at the time. But so it works smoothly on joint committees.
Yeah. So are they consulted at the same time, or is it just one? Sorry.
Yeah, that was what I was getting at.
Like that. So they have briefings, and it will be the chair that's expected in the chair or attend the briefing.
Not both chairs.
Well, they can both attend though. Yeah, we encourage both to attend though.
Yeah, my understanding is that they are co-chairs and they alternate who chairs each meeting.
Yeah.
No, they're not alternating chairs.
Yeah. So they are a collective.
So they're both
chair.
co-chairs all the time.
Yeah.
It's only the question of who chairs each meeting that changes.
So my final question then is that what the constitutional changes identify as being a position? It's a question for the
Dominic or Chloe.
Yeah.
So.
You want me to come in, Chair?
Yes,
so obviously the paper authorises Head of Legal and Democratic Services to make the necessary changes to the Constitution.
Yeah.
So that's obviously something we would be able to cover off in amending the Constitution. Hopefully Vivian will agree with me on that one.
Yes, absolutely. The recommendation 3 is there to cover off everything that we already had in mind that might be necessary, but obviously taking on board comments of members today. So certainly everything can be covered.
Okay.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I think the proof of the pudding will be
Yes,
done, isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah, okay, it's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So any other questions? Well, Don is on screen. So, are we happy to accept the recommendations here? Have we read through them, and do you want me to read them out?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. So these are the establishment of a joint climate and nature advisory committee. So the recommendations that Cabinet recommends to Council that Council A agrees to establish a joint climate and nature advisory committee with South Oxford District Council and the terms of reference and administrative arrangement as set out in this report, and in doing so abolish the existing climate emergency advisory committee. That one appoints a committee for the 2026-27 year, allocates seats to each political group and appoints councillors and substitutes to sit on it in accordance with paragraphs 10 to 16 of this report. 2. Appoints co-chairs as set out in paragraph 13. 3. Authorises the head of Legal and Democratic to amend the existing procedure rules as set out in Appendix A in this report into the Council's constitution, and to make any consequential changes to the consultation to reflect the decision of Council. And 4. Authorises the head of Legal and Democratic to call an independent remuneration panel for an allowance to be established for the co-chair role. That's it. Yeah, I was just going to say, because it's got an A, but there's no B. So it's sort of like it's something else. So maybe we can just get rid of that A.
Yeah.
So if everybody's happy with that, can I have a proposal? Robert can't, but Councillor Fulsham and a seconder, Councillor Pickhills, and everybody in agreement.
Yeah,
agree. So we will go on to item number 9, and that is also Councillor Clegg's to introduce. So I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is on the car park fees across the Vale's car parks. And as I'm sure you're all aware, we have to review car park fees every year. And the aim for our policy is that the car park income should at least meet the cost of running the car parks. So this time last year, Cabinet agreed to amend the price of parking permits in Vale car parks based on a rate of a 40% reduction on the daily rate, and no other changes were made. In table 1 on the report, you can see that the car park income and expenditure for last year, a forecast for this year, and a forecast for the next 3 years. If you look at the very bottom line of that, we had a very good year 2 years ago, 2024-2025, with a surplus of nearly 90,000. This year that's soon coming to a close, we're looking at a deficit of around 37,000. In the year coming, we're forecasting a surplus of a much smaller surplus of around 12,000, which will almost exactly balance out with our forecast for the following year. And then into 28-29, we're looking at a sizable deficit. Now, the car parking policy is in line with national guidance, which aims to set a balanced account. So the income from car parking fees and charges must at least meet the costs of running the car parks. With this in mind, officers have proposed a number of options for the Cabinet to consider, and these are summarised in Table 3. So to briefly outline those options, the first is to introduce a charge of 50p for the first hour for the car parks on the edge of towns, and a charge of £1 for up to 1 hour for the town centre car parks. That would bring in a large amount of revenue, estimated around £220,000 per annum, and that would require a formal consultation, and the Cabinet would need to consider any feedback. Option B is to increase all car park fees by 10%, and you can see from the table that the fee for up to 2 hours would increase from £2 to £2.20 and so on. Increasing the all-day fees would automatically increase the cost of the permits, as this is based on a formula using the all-day fee. This change can be implemented by simple notices in the car parks and the local newspaper, so we wouldn't need to go out to a formal consultation. It's also worth noting that none of these options are mutually exclusive, so we can choose a buffet of options and combine them as we see fit. Option C is to increase the charging period into the evening. So, as I'm sure you're aware, So certainly most, if not all. Sorry, there's a fire alarm in the hotel I'm staying at. I may need to hand over to Councillor Coleman. Oh, it stops. I think I'm okay. I'll try and get through this quickly. Most, if not all, car parks run from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening. And the suggestion here is that evening charging period would increase from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that would bring in around £88,000 per year. And it would not impact on local residents who use the car park overnight, as they do not have any off-street parking. Sorry, yes. Option D is to have charges for parking on Sunday in all car parks. At the moment, only those in Abingdon near the river charge for Sunday parking. So straightforward increases in fees can be implemented via notices in the car parks and newspapers, and we'd aim for 1st of April. Any more substantial changes would require a full consultation. Those are the large items really focused on bringing in extra revenue. There are some other options that we should consider alongside. Some of these have some implications on budget, but they're much smaller, and they're really there as sort of operational improvements. So option E is to change the car park machines so that they do not produce a paper ticket, and that will save us on money on paper and printing, and it's better for the environment too. We produce almost 500,000 tickets for that's only for free parking alone. For paid parking, it would be more than that. By having a machine that does not issue a ticket, we should reduce litter and make it more efficient and so on. Machines will continue to accept all types of payments, including coin, contactless card, and paying by phone. I'd also note that we already have at least one machine that does this already. There's a trial going on in Abingdon. I used it the other day. It works pretty well. Option F is to reduce the price of the permits by changing the formula, so there is a 50% reduction in the daily fee rather than the 40% reduction that there is currently there. Officers have received a formal complaint from one local resident in Wantage who did wish to speak to Cabinet today, but has unfortunately not been able to make it, as Candida mentioned earlier. The report considers a number of requests raised by the residents, such as car park permits allowing parking across all council car parks in the Vale. They're currently just tied to one particular car park. Dedicated reserved parking for residents in all the car parks, and surplus from car parks to be given back to users. Officers have considered these requests, but consider they do not provide the balance that is needed between offering reduced permits for businesses, residents, and regular users with that of casual users. Residents would benefit, if agreed in option F, to offer a reduced permit at 50% discount. Increasing from 40% means that the current annual cost of a permit would reduce from around £1,092 to £910. Although, of course, if we also went for option B and increased the prices, then it would cancel out to some extent. Although officers have calculated that it should still be £91 cheaper than the current permit per year if we went for both options F and B together. And there's more detail in Appendix 1. Lastly, option G is to give authority to the head of development and corporate landlord to be able to agree straightforward requests for permits at no charge in support of the voluntary sector. As I understand it, these are already handled on a case-by-case basis, but because there isn't the constitutional structure in place, it's quite time-consuming and there's much more of a process involved. Whereas if we agreed option G, then those requests could still be handled in much the same way, but with less paperwork and so on. So in conclusion, Cabinet is asked to look at the options A to G to change the fees and charges and agree the parking fees for the next financial year. These changes could be implemented in April if they are straightforward, or by August if there's any consultation needed. And I will hand over back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clegg. That is a very comprehensive rundown and introduction, with a lot of things to think about there. So I'm going to open it up to any conversation and comments and questions that you might have. Councillor Fawcett.
Thanks. I support our overall objective in this of attempting to get to sort of run at a break-even approach. Obviously, some of the costings have changed this year because the figures now take into account an allocation of central costs, which is a change from the equivalent set of figures we've seen in different years, and that's changed the outlook for the forthcoming few years a little bit. We do need to take account of that. On balance, my view is that given that the projections are for relatively small deficits and surpluses for the next 2 financial years, we don't actually need to increase the fees this year, and it will be better to take a bit of time to look at what we might want to do in the future. I think there's a big advantage at the moment in the structure that we agreed 2 years ago, which gives a very simple set of prices, which we've had positive feedback about. My preference would be to stick with that, and if we do make any changes in the future, it is in line with the principle of having very simple, easy to understand fees. So I would not want us to take forward any of the options that are around increasing charges this year. The 2 items that are not around increasing charges, which I think is option E around the pay on the ticketless machines, and option G around providing more flexibility for volunteer groups and so on. I'm very supportive of. They seem to be fairly straightforward things that we can agree. So I don't know if you want a proposal at this stage, but when we get to the point of an actual proposal, my proposal would be that we should support E and G and not the others.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fawcett. Councillor Crawford.
Can I just make a couple of points about the conclusion? It said that since CPE was introduced, there's been a limited surplus, and that is true in the way that we've chosen to account for it. I think we do need to bear in mind that this council has chosen to use some community infrastructure levy monies to support some of the works that needed to be done on car parks. Had that been our own capital, there would have been a capital charge against that. So the tiny surplus that has been made actually would have disappeared had we chosen not to go down that route. And the other point I'd like to make is, I've raised this before, I'm not suggesting we do anything about it, but we have chosen this time to look at the indirect expenditure to support the service. That's the direction of travel, and that's understandable. What the numbers don't actually show, though, is what the indirect income is as a result of business rates, which we are collecting, and so which we have to pay for all our car park, but then we get, and is shown in these numbers, but we don't show the proportion of NDR business rates income that this council then retains. And that might be quite difficult to assess, and it might not be a large amount, but if these car parks weren't in existence, then we wouldn't get those business rates and we wouldn't keep a portion of it. So that is in itself, to my mind, an indirect income that we're not recording. I'm not saying we should, because maybe it's a small amount and it might be complicated to do it. And this possibly worth bearing that in mind.
Great.
Yeah, so Cabinet colleagues will be aware that we've seen a couple of iterations of this report, and really I think the area of concern that most of us had was over those centralised costs. You know, as the member for finance, my view is that the car park should be self-financing. Okay, but so that means we need to know what the baseline is, if the baseline is X, then that's what we need to make sure we've got as an income. What we have to be certain about there is it X, or is it X minus something, or is it X plus something? So I'd like to thank the finance officers and also the officers who are working on car park areas, because this is the first time that we've had to do this. So it is a very complex piece of work. So, you know, if I give an example, all of our staff, you know, require an element of management, you know, require support from human resources. You know, how much of the work from human resources is allocated to those individuals working on car parks? So there's an element of good judgment. We did get an independent company in to help us with that work. And as I say, I thank the finance officers particularly, because they've gone through that in quite a lot of detail and managed to get us to where we are now, which we think is as pretty much as accurate as we can get. The point about the non-domestic rates is a valid point, and I think as we mature our thinking on how we allocate or proportion centralised costs, I think, you know, we will develop the process better, and so that maybe that we will then look at those in consideration for the future. But, you know, thank you for your comment, and thank you for also saying that you're probably not looking for us to change it now. I actually don't think it would be a significant change. I think it's been marginal. And, you know, then finally sum up on the costs. You know, yes, we're showing a small surplus, 12.5k for next year. Of course, that is only a prediction as to what we think it might be, because it could be that people decide they're not going to use the car parks, they're going to use public transport more, in which case the revenue will go down. Or equally, it might be that for some reason public transport is not meeting people's requirements, and we end up with people using the car park more. So these things are best estimates. My personal view at the moment is, does it look like for the year 26-27 that the car park will be self-financing? I think it does. I think for the following year, there's a marginal deficit of about the same amount of money. So, you know, I'm willing to wait to see what happens next year to substantiate whether we need to increase or, you know, potentially even reduce the costs of car parking fees. So I am supportive of the baseline report, and I'm also therefore supportive of what Councillor Fawcett said in terms of we don't need to increase the revenue income to balance for next year. I'm talking about 26-27, but we do need to think about what we're going to be doing in particular for years 28-29, where we're close to a 40,000 deficit. So, and for that, we've got the time to do that. And I think I would urge officers to start looking at this at the earliest opportunity, including those centralised costs, to get us in a good position for next year's consideration.
Thank you. Yeah. I can start saying something potentially forming here. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm particularly glad to see the option F of moving to paperless pay on arrival machines. I believe that's the way that the whole car parking industry seems to be going. Certainly large park and ride car parks in Oxford that I use regularly have all switched to that mode, and it has improved the local environment tremendously, with a lack of fluttering litter around the place, and is easier with people moving more to app-based ticketing. I think it's a move ahead. Certainly the experience of the Oxford Park and Rides is that you need far less machines than you would have if it was just paid with cash or card. I think it's a good way forward. I'm also very pleased at the support for our volunteers. I'm sure officers will keep an eye on how heavily that scheme is used. I don't want it to become a free-for-all, but I'm very supportive of these two measures, and I do agree completely with Councillor Fawcett about this isn't the time to be looking at any increases in fees.
Yeah, I think you just have to split this option E is the ticketless.
Yeah.
I think when I first read this, I did have a little bit of concern that people would be paying for their car parking and then forget what time they'd bought up to. But of course, actually, they're in no worse a position because they read the time off of the clock on the machine with this proposal. At the moment, they get a ticket, but they put it in the windscreen of their car. So when you're sitting having your coffee, you've got nothing to refer to unless you've made a note of it anyways. So you're not actually in any worse position. But we will need to make sure that residents are aware of the fact that they do need to make a mental note.
Yes.
Let's say that's no different to what they had to do before.
Yeah, so we'll take a photo. We've got a few hands up, but I was just going to say, one of the things that I was thinking about when it came to some of the options, there was one of the options was to change the evening hours and change Sunday free parking. And one of the things that I think is really important now, particularly when we hear so many pressures on the nighttime economy, hospitality industry, restaurants and pubs and the like, if we were to change those the period of free parking in the evening or on Sundays, we might be really disadvantaging some of those businesses where families, like on Sundays, come in to have Sunday lunch at pubs and restaurants and various other things. So I think that's one thing that we need to keep in mind as well when we make those decisions about options. But I think Councillor Clegg came in first and then Councillor Pickles.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very, very supportive of option E about the ticketless machines. There are some additional benefits that I realised that came out of conversation with officers. As part of introducing these new machines, officers would look to move the locations of the machines for a number of reasons. Firstly, because users will no longer need to take that piece of paper and put it back in their car windscreen, the machines don't need to be in the middle of the car park anymore. They can be near the exits. And so that should make it more convenient for users. They don't need to do that extra journey walking back to their car, and users should find it a more pleasant experience, particularly those with limited mobility or who have small children with them, for example. It will save them a bit of extra hassle that they currently need to do to put that ticket in their windscreen. Another thing that officers will be looking at is that these new machines will be solar powered. They won't be run off mains electricity, which is great. But it does mean that officers need to be careful that they're not putting these machines underneath trees where leaves could be blocking the sunlight and so on. So yeah, just an extra benefit of these ticketless machines. They're not just about saving printing costs and reducing litter. They should make life better for users, even if those users have to remember a little bit harder about what time they have until.
I just take the photo of the screen when it comes up.
So something that did just go into mind, I'm pretty certain we talked about it, so I can't remember what the answer was. There will be some people who want to receive a receipt. Will these machines still on demand print a receipt out for people? Yeah.
Yes, that's my understanding. So the machines will still need to have some printing capability in them. Officers, please do contradict me if I've misremembered that. But that will be at the request of the user rather than by default.
Thank you. John, just yes. Thumbs up, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Anything else you wanted to add? John? Councillor
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, John. Councillor
A couple of very small points. Another advantage of going to ticketless is when you've got a ticket, there's too much potential for losing that ticket down a little crack in the car, and then you've got all the associated palaver and officer time or whatever in sorting out the fact that you don't really need to be fined, and they can then cancel the ticket, and which is, I know I've not been through it, but I know people who've had. The other thing about not going into evening charging is this also impacts on people who live in the town centres who may use their car during the day, so they don't have a residence permit, but they bring their car back early evening and then park it and move it early morning. So I think it's not just people coming into the town, it's people who live in the towns as well.
Have we finished our discussions on this item to begin with? And do you think we can come up with a proposal on recommendations? Would anybody like to venture something?
I'm going to nominate Councillor Paulson.
You boys,
Well, I'll repeat what I proposed earlier then, that we support option E and G. Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
yeah,
We don't have to say that what we're not supporting.
yes, no. So it's effectively keeping it same, but supporting E and G, and with the sort of the proviso that we start early, given that there's the forecast finances into the future, that we start early and look at this and really see, mindful of officers' workload, to see how we can modify this in the future. Yeah.
I mean, I think, there is obviously clearly a balance in that we need to see some income coming in next year in order to inform that. But yeah, I think that's really what I'm looking for.
Would anybody else like to comment on that proposal?
I'll second it.
Councillor Common seconding it. So if we've got that proposal in the air, Councillor Fawcett proposed, Councillor Coleman seconded. And does everybody agree to that? Oh, I just see Councillor Clegg's hand up.
I was I know I don't get a vote because I'm attending remotely, but as the cabinet member responsible, I support that proposal.
Thank you. So is everybody agreed on that?
Agreed.
Yeah, so the recommendations is agree to options E and G, and then you'd have B and C as well, which would be the. That's how.
Yeah,
I
Yes,
now.
recommendations being
Yes,
seen,
I
not
thought you said
options.
options.
Yeah. Sorry?
Recommendations being seen, not
Yeah,
options.
Yeah, so
Yes.
recommendation A is to agree options E and G, and
Yeah.
then you'd have B and C.
Yes.
I will go back.
Underneath.
That is correct.
Yeah. I just want to make it clear for the recommendations and.
Yes. So if I shall go through the recommendations,
Yeah, if you want to.
car park fees and charges for 2026-27 recommendations.
I think A should. That isn't really what you're doing, is it? A, so you can change that to agree options E and G.
And that we have considered the options A to G.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have agreed to car parking fees for the financial year 2026-27. With proposal, I'll just say, I guess the proposal that so just that.
Do you want me to
put
put
it
in the
in
words about
G?
the change car parks pay on the arrival?
Yeah, so we recommend proposals, options E and G.
Yeah.
With no further changes at this time.
Yeah.
But as you said, presumably you captured that in the minutes, that we will hope to work on it at the earliest possible opportunity to see if there's changes that we can make in the future to compensate for predicted changes in our financial circumstances. Does that make sense?
So I'm just being a bit semantic here. So the recommendation is that we consider the options which we have done.
Yes.
What we would like now is officers to implement options E and G.
Yeah.
Okay, and therefore any subsequent action that's required under those recommendations B
Yeah,
and C, which I don't think there will be, but
I think the payment machines would require consultation and an order. So the B and C recommendations would be valid. You keep those in. That's what you want to do.
So I think you've got the gist.
Yes, I think I definitely
The
do.
E and
you've
G,
been
no
clear.
changes. The recommendations are, it's slightly confusing because it does sort of, it's past tense sort of place, but we have considered it, and our considerations have led to the proposal that we support options E and G with no further changes. And yeah, subject to B and C as well. So
Yeah,
I
perfect.
won't read it out.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
you've all
fine.
been completely clear.
Yes,
So I'll be
but
able to
yes,
do
so
that.
we have, so are we happy to accept the recommendations? Do I need a separate proposer and
Yes, please.
Yeah. proposer for the recommendations as set out just then with the,
I propose.
thank you. So you should.
I'll second.
Excellent, that makes sense. Thank you very much. And is everybody in agreement?
Agreed.
Fantastic, thank you. So with only two substantive items on the agenda, that brings our meeting to a close. So I will draw it to a close and thank everybody both in the room and online, members and officers alike. Thank you very much for attending. We do appreciate it, and all the work that's gone into the reports as well. Yes, thank you very much, and yes, we will close the meeting now.
Thank you.
Thank you.